Yum, yum!
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Modo with Ellery. In this episode, we're going to be looking at some procedural modeling, and we're just going to do some simple modeling here and look at some ways that you can use procedural modeling to speed up your workflow, and also look at some things that you can do to improve the quality of your procedural modeling, because I think there are a lot of kind of common misconceptions there seem to be out there about procedural modeling in general. And, I get it. On the base level, the idea behind procedural modeling is very different from the Modo modeling paradigm that we've all gotten used to. But really what's going on here is if you leverage the strengths of procedural modeling and use it in conjunction with the other tools inside of Modo, you can get a much more powerful way of modeling all of your scenes because you can use procedural modeling where it shines. But there are also a few caveats and some things that you can easily work around that will seem like things that are missing in the procedural modeling toolkit as it stands. So this is just going to be a quick intro, a couple of examples, and some things that you can do to use them. If you want more procedural modeling, there is going to be more coming that I'm going to be working on. Let me know if you can think of any examples that you might like to see, but there is going to be more procedural modeling. And in the meantime, I think everybody should go and check out Brad Peebler's series on procedural modeling, a very great set of tutorials, and also for a really good cause. So the link to that will be in the video description. Go check it out, support Heirs to Our Ocean and Brad Peebler's great tutorial work. So let's hop in here and look at creating some tubes with procedural modeling, because it's going to be a real simple topic where we can start off and look at some of the things that you can do really easily. All right, so in this scene, I've got basically just a blank mesh layer, and then I have a curve in a secondary mesh layer, and that's it so far. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this curve to build a series of tubes. Now, if I wanted to, I could make several different curves, and that would work fine, but I'm going to show you how you can do it with just a single curve, and that way you can get things that look like they have some kind of conformity. All right. Now, a couple of things that you can also do. Now, with procedural modeling, you could start with creating procedural geometry. So I could start with creating a cylinder with the procedural tool. So if I hop over here to my my second tab here that has my mesh ops in it, I could go in here and click. I could add an operator, and I could just put in cylinder, and I could drop in a cylinder and start with this. I could make it say 0 height, so it's just a circle. But that's not what I'm going to do this time, and the reason why is I want to show you some nice options that you have if you're starting with base geometry. Now, some of the stuff can be done right in the procedurals, and some can't. So I'm just going to go ahead and undo here, so we get back to our regular old base mesh, and let's start just by putting in a cylinder. All right, so I'm just going to drag this out here and make sure it's right at the origin, and let's make it kind of small, maybe. Oops. Don't want any Y height because I just want a circle. All right, so something like that. And there we go. Okay, so we've got that. Now, what I do want to do, though, is I want to change this from face to Catmull Clark so that I have some subdivisions on here. And at first, it's not going to look like much because, of course, it's just a circle. And actually, here, let's go ahead and unsubdivide it so we can start off and see the way that this is going to work this way. All right, so let's go over here, and I'm going to go to my base mesh. And now I'm going to add an operator, and I'm going to put on a curve extrude. So let's put in curve, and we'll find curve extrude down here. Just double click to add this in, and we'll be greeted with a pop-up here to let us pick the path. So if I had several paths created, this would be a good way to get it started. So I could use whichever path that I want to. But in this case, mesh 2 has my curve, so I'll go ahead and put it on and click OK. And you'll see a couple of things going on here. One, my path is inverted, so it doesn't look like a tube, but it looks like a tunnel if you're inside of it. But if you're not inside of it, it just doesn't look very good at all. So I can invert the polygons. See, and that does that. I can always go back and do these at any time here. I can control these start and end caps. So a lot of ways this works just like doing the regular curve extrude. All right, now the nice thing about this is that we can continue and add more mesh operations on top and just build up a more and more complex item. Now, one thing that you'll notice here is that this item is not subdivided. And if I go to my mesh ops here and I put on a subdivide, look what happens. It's physically subdividing it. So this is going to be like pressing Shift D and then choosing a subdivision mode. In this case, this is using Catmull Clark, but you could choose faceted, smooth, whatever. But it's just actually physically subdividing the polygons, which in this case isn't what we want. We would just want a subdivision surface. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that. And one thing that you can do that's really nice here is if I click back to the base mesh, you can see I have this little G turned on here. That's going to allow me to ghost my future steps, even if I step backwards. So now that I'm back on my base mesh, I can still see what's going on. And if I press Shift Tab to subdivide this circle, now two things are going to happen. And the first thing is that it's going to make the circle a little smoother around. But since I'm now dealing with subdivision surface geometry, all of the mesh ops that I do are going to be subdivided. So this is a really good important thing to notice is if you have subdivision surfaces as the base, or if you create a procedural cylinder and you use subdivision surfaces, this will allow you to have a subdeed procedural model. Otherwise, you can only subdivide it by subdividing the polygons. Okay, so just something to keep in mind there. All right, so that I think is working fairly well. I'm going to again step back here just so we can see what we've got going on. And yeah, so here's our circle and here's our curve. Now, if I go back here to the curve extrude, now we can actually start to do more stuff. Now, one of the cool things, or I think one of the cool things about working with the procedural modeling tool set in Modo is that you can still do a lot of your normal modeling operations. You're just doing them with mesh operations. So in this case, I want to thicken this and then give it a little bit of kind of some ribbing. All right. So I'm going to choose mesh operator and let's do thicken. And again, we just double click to put it on there. And then we get our tool handles just like normal. We can click and pull these down. But you'll notice something that happens here, and this is the common thing that happens with subdivision surface models, is that now that we've thickened it, we've just got these kind of blobby ends. All right, and I don't really want blobby ends, right? I want to have, I want to have these be, sharp and flush. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press L to select that whole loop. And then we're going to zoom down to the other end here. And I'm just going to hold Shift and lasso select the other end. And now I'm going to go ahead and add another mesh operation, and I'm going to put on a polygon bevel. All right, now as soon as I do that, you can see that it's essentially just adding a support edge, and we're getting a nice flush end now. Okay, so all of our additional polygonal modeling and selection tools are still going to work here. So if I go back here and I loop select these, right? Something like that ought to work. And now I'm going to select another adjacent row. I can press L to get loops. I can go back in here and put on another polygon bevel. And this time let's pull in a little bit. And now I'm going to do the same thing here, where again I'm just going to be using the up arrow key to move my selection down the way there. And again, I'll select some adjacent polys, move my way down, loop, mesh ops here, bevel, and polygon bevel, and that ought to do it. So we'll just pull this one out. Actually, I'm going to pull it out a little and in a little. And then if I wanted, I could do actually one more set of this here, where let's just go down to there, and then same thing. So I'm going to get a whole additional loop here just so that I can put on one more to sharpen this up. So again, bevel, polygon bevel, and we just can pull this in here. All right, so now I've created a tube. Okay, not such a big deal in and of itself, but now I can go in here to my curve, and with this created, I can just turn on my element move tool with the T key, and I can move this around. And maybe I would want to just pull this down a little bit. Yeah, so something like that. All right, so now once I have this one ready, and I think this is working all right, the nice thing is I can continue to work with additional versions of this just by taking and kind of freezing off a version of this. So if I just right-click on this mesh item that has my procedural modeling on it, I'm going to choose freeze mesh operators, and I want to choose duplicate and freeze. It's kind of cutting off the screen there, but it says duplicate and freeze. And what it's going to do is it's going to take everything that I've got there, turn it into polygons, drop it in a new layer, and hide my procedural layer. So now I've just got normal polygons here, which is kind of cool. So let's go ahead and take this one. I'm just going to slide it off to the side, maybe down a little bit. Something like that I think works. And just to kind of build this up quickly here, watch this. I can go and take and turn off the polygon bevels, except for that first one, on this version of it. And then at the same time, I can go up here to my curve and make some adjustments to the curve, just to kind of make this one a little bit different feeling than the other ones, so they don't look like they're exactly the same. Okay. Great. And now if I go back to here, you can see that I've got everything done. So once again, I'm going to right click, duplicate and freeze. All right, so now one thing that that I'm going to do here is I want to create one path that actually has multiple tubes running along it. So this is another way that you can do things. But the problem is I'm going to have to back up. So let's go back a one level of polygon beveled here. So I only have just my curve extrude and my thicken. Okay, and this might look a little bit different. I had a crash and had to rebuild here. But just so you know, I want to have several different tubes along here running together. But if I create them and have different amount of polygons going into the procedural modeling, it's going to change the selections that I made to do any of these polygon bevels. All right, so you can't just directly go and change the number of polygons at one state without it changing the way that your polygons are going to be working in future states. Now there is a way around that, which I'll show you here in just a moment though. All right, so let's go back here to where we just have thicken. All right, and now what I'm going to do, let's turn off that poly bevel entirely. Let's go back to the base mesh. And what I'm going to do is go right down to kind of around the origin here. I'm going to take this circle here and I'm going to scale it down. All right, so what I'm going to do is create several different pieces of geometry here. So I'm going to go ahead and get another cylinder, and I'm just going to draw this one out. And at first it might behave a little bit odd. That's okay, because we're going to fix this in a moment. But I'm just going to drag this one up here. And I want to make sure that it is Capmel-Clark subdivision. You can see right now it's got a little extrusion on it. That's just based off of what's going forward in our path here. So let's go ahead and now take that one, copy, paste it, and we'll move it over here. So kind of some Mickey Mouse ears, I guess, but yeah, that's okay. All right, so now we're going to go in here into our curve extrude, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here, and you can see that I have a selection turned on. I'm going to clear that selection. All right, you can see now that as soon as I clear the selection, I get multiple tubes running along the same path. So if I look up here, there you go, you can see that we've got several different tubes extruding there. And then I can go up to my thicken. You can see that that is also working. And now what I can do is I can add this polygon bevel back on, but I'm going to do something differently here. So I can go into this selection set here, and I'm going to clear it. All right. And before I turn this back on or make this polygon bevel visible, I'm going to go in and I'm going to select just the end caps on both ends of all three of these tubes. So let's just select that, and I'm going to add those to the selection. And now if I turn polygon bevel back on and go back up to it, see now that it's performing the polygon bevel the way that we want to. All right, so I can do similar things with these continuing bevels. So let's say that I go here to this select by index. I'm just going to clear it. And let's say that on this one, I just want to have those kind of bumps on this version of the hose that's over here. So I'm just going to move up along the line, make a selection, get another row of polygons, press L, and then I'm going to add those to the selection. I'm going to make the polygon bevel visible, and there you can see we've got that. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to go to my selection, and in this case, I'm going to clear it, and now I'm going to add these back in. So once again, just put these along. Oops, and actually, I take it back. I selected the wrong ones. I want this one, and then that one. There we go, because I had beveled, and I don't want too much stuff selected here. Same thing here. Let's get this guy and this guy, and we'll move up along the way. By the way, there was nothing wrong with the selection I had made in the last in the last that I said, oops, I just don't want my ribs to be that close together. That's all. So just so you know there. So let's go ahead and add those to my selection. Now we'll make this visible, and we'll click up there, and we've got that. Okay, so we can see that's working. And then on this last polygon bevel, I'm going to do something a little bit different just so you can see another way that this works. So since I already have these polygons selected, I can click Set, and it's going to create a new polygon selection set based off of what I currently have selected. So now if I again make this one visible and click up there, you can see that that is now working. All right, so as I pull these in and out, you can see that it's just working on those ones that were previously selected. So now, with fairly little effort, I've got a pretty varied assortment of tubes here. All right, so you can pretty easily do this. And if you have curves that are conforming to your geometry, if you have wires coming off of a computer, if you have something along a a conduit where you need some wiring and stuff, and you already have some points to select to create your curves, you can easily use those curves to move along in this kind of a workflow. All right, so let's then look at another thing that we can do here. And for this, I'm going to use just a really simple hallway that I've constructed just off of a couple of different panels from the first Nerney pack. So I've got one that's a light that's got some overhead light, and then the rest are just the basic ones. Duplicated them, stuck them all together, and then I've in the intervening space I've put in some little places for some tubes and some vents and some stuff like that. All right, and then at the end of the hallway here, I have a slightly modified version of one of the pillars from the second pack, and this has actually been changed a little bit so that it can be something like a stasis pod. That's at least my thought here. So what I'm going to do is I want to create an entire array of these stasis pods that are going to be going up a big, a big cylinder up around, I don't know, that this hallway is leading up to. So it'd be something like you could go hop in and sleep while your vessel is in, traveling across the stars. Whatever, it's not really an important scenario here. So let's go back, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just taking this guy here, and if this is the origin here, I want to move it away from the origin a bit. I'm going to create these in kind of an array around here. All right, so let's move these back, and I'm going to end up having to move my hallway back a little bit because these are going to wrap all the way around here. So let's just move this back maybe 3 meters. Yeah, 3 meters will give me 6 meters around. I think that ought to work. Okay, so I'm going to use this as the basis then for my procedural modeling. So now I'll click on Mesh Add Operator, and I want to get a radial array here. So I'm just going to double click on a radial array, and that's probably a little heavy, so I was thinking along the lines of having, I don't know, maybe 8 of them, so that's too many. So let's go down here to our helix generator, which is inside of that radial array, and I'm going to change this down to maybe 8. I think that works pretty well. Okay, and what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to delete some of them that are in the wrong place that are going to be overlapping our hallway, which, by the way, let's just take the hallway since we're here, and I'm going to pull it back to maybe right here. So we only have to delete, let's say, just this one right here. So that's the only one that I have to delete. Okay, and then all the other ones can stay. And then on my other versions that are going up and down, from there I can just leave the complete ring. Okay, so that ought to work all right. Yeah, I think that's going to be okay. All right, so now let's continue here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to close up that radial array because we've got what we want there. And now I'm going to add another operator, and I'm going to add a clone. All right, so there's our clone, and we're going to, again, and we're going to open up the clone here, and in the tool pipe, we've got our linear generator, and our Y, I want to make this 3 meters. I think these are almost exactly 3 meters. So that way they're going to go one on top of the other on top of the other. That works out. Okay, and I want more than one, so let's go up maybe, or something like that. Yeah, something like that I think will be pretty interesting. Actually, here, let's go even more, because what I want to do is I want to take the entire group here, and I want to have it go up and down, so you get the feeling that as you're walking out of this hallway, it's to a big, a big tube that goes up and down. So let's do that. So I'm going to make this go, let's maybe 7 of them. Yeah, that ought to work. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move everything down. So again, I can't just grab and move it with the move tool. I have to use a mesh operator. So I'm going to put in a transform effector, and we're just going to pull the whole thing down until it's centered up with, one of these. And I think that's going to be, these are 3 meters each, so I think 9 meters. I ought to put it pretty much right in the middle. Okay, cool. So what I would like to do here is I would like to go ahead and just delete this one here, but I want to make some changes and some adjustments and additions to this. So I don't want to delete things just yet, because if I select polygons and delete them, remember, that's going to change if I change any of the polygon numbers going into this step. So I don't want to do that just yet. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a new mesh layer right here. And I'm going to create a cylinder, which let's just put it 1.5, and we're going to zero this out. And I'm only going to give this 8 sides, because that's going to look cooler. That way I've got kind of one facing each one once I rotate it. Right now I've got a vertex facing each one, but I want to have a flat polygon facing each one. Let's give this a little bit of thickness. And we're going to change it from Capmo Clark back to faces. And this isn't a procedural one, so I don't have to worry about any of that. I'm just going to rotate this to where it's flush there. Okay. All right, so what I do want to do here is I want to create kind of a couple of things. So I want to create some steps that are going to come off of this, off of each of the individual pods that will come forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create them on the first single one, and then that's going to give me a step. So if this is like an elevator and it goes up and down, every time it reaches a new level, there will be something to step on to get to, right? And then I also want to create a wall that goes all the way around behind it, because right now it just is feeling like it's floating out in the middle of nowhere. So for all of these things, I'm going to go back to my Stasis Pod layer here, and then I'm going to go back to my base. All right, so with the base, I'm going to just go in here and I'm going to create a nice square. And you can see how this is working just right off the bat. As I create one, the ghosted version is showing me, the ones that will be created. All right, and I want to zero this out. So let's put it at 0 and 0. And I want to leave it in the X position because I like it off to the side like that. That's how I want it. And to give it a little bit of thickness. And since I'm back on the base, the cool thing is I can still work with normal modeling operations. So I'm going to get all of these, and I'm going to bevel them just a little bit. Oops, I want that to be faceted. There we go. Maybe something like that. And then I'm going to grab just this polygon on the top, and I'm going to bevel it in just a little bit and down just a hair. All right, so we've got this little step that goes into here. But, as I look at this, as we're stepping in, that's a bit of a big step up. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to create a secondary little box right in here. And you might get a little bit of lag. That's okay. You can always turn off the visibility of your mesh op layers. So just a note there, you don't have to leave them running while you do this. But I kind of like to show how this is working, so I'm going to leave them on for right now. All right, so let's go there, and then let's pull this out a little bit. And again, I'm just making a little bit of a step here. So I'm going to do the same thing here with the corners. We're just going to select that one, this one, and this one. And I'm going to bevel them just a little bit, just so we get something that looks a bit like it aligns. And actually, as I look at that, it looks a little weird. So it looks really thick. So I'm just going to pull it up here a ways. And I'm probably going to have to pull down the top too, so we get the sense of this being a bit more of a step. Yeah. I think something like that works pretty well. So now we have a step up. Now I could go in and put something to support the step, but you know, this has alien hybrid advanced human technology or something like that, so it can float. There you go. So that was going to work for there. All right, so I've got my steps out and steps up into the pods. The last thing that I need now are some walls that are going to go around the entire thing. All right, and for that I'm going to go back to some panels from the Nernies. So let's go back to our layout here. And just while I'm here, I'm going to open up the Stasis Pod, and I'm going to hide all of my extra stuff. So all I want to see at this point is the one Stasis Pod, just to make my life a little bit easier. All right, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go grab, let's see, I've already used the really basic one, so let's use one that's not quite as basic. All right, so now that that's in there, at the moment, it's just on its own mesh layer, so it's not going to allow us to do anything with it as far as the all of the mesh ops go. So what we'll do is we'll take and copy this and just paste it into this same mesh, so it's going to obey all of the procedural modeling that we had done there. So let's go around to our polygons. I'm going to select everything. And actually, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it roughly into place. It's going to make my life just a bit easier here. So let's rotate it this way. And I would kind of like those panels to be facing up like that. And I'm going to move it back here, kind of somewhere behind this guy here. And then I'm also going to move it up. Let's go 1.5 meters. Now I know that these are 2 meters. So the other thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to scale it up to 150%, so that it will be the same 3 meters that my other pieces are, at least in height. Now we may need to do some additional scaling or moving around to get it to work as far as wrapping around like a tunnel, but we'll do that when we get there. So let's go ahead and copy this. I'm not going to actually delete it out of here, and then we'll go into here, and I'm going to go ahead and just save this where we are. I've been having some crashes today, and it's a good idea to save your work as you go also. So let's go ahead back to here, and then I'll select the base mesh, and I will paste those polygons in. You can see they've gone in, and right now they're actually almost touching. So one of the benefits of working with this in this kind of ghosted mode is that I can still see what's going on down the line. So I'm actually going to turn off my clone and transform effectors just so I have less geometry here to mess with. And now I can just pull this in until those plates, I'm going to go until maybe they overlap just a little bit. So maybe just a little bit here. Let's pull these down just about like that, because I want these to appear as if they're all actually put together. So if they overlap just a little bit, I think that will work pretty well. All right, so let's go ahead and drop the tool, and we're going to step back up to there so we can see how this works. Looks good. And then we're going to go back up and check out our clone and our transform. We'll go all the way up, and we can see now we've got this entire tunnel of these pieces here. And if we go into, oops, look what happens. We can't see what's going on. And that's okay though, because we can actually get rid of these things. So I'm going to double click on that, and let's go in here and double click on the glass, the other piece of glass, get everything selected there. And I don't even want this step here, although I do want the step out, so I'm going to leave that in. And then I got to get all these little bolts here. So I may have made my life a little easier if I put in a single part mesh, but that's okay. So once I've got everything selected here, now I'm going to again go to the mesh operators, and I can add a delete operator. And that is going to get rid of everything that I had selected. Now in this case, I probably need to do a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is go up here. I'm going to open up selection, open up select by index. All right, and then I'm going to double click on this guy, and this guy, and this guy. And if I can find it, that last little bolt, there it is. Same thing on the other side. So this one, this little hiding bolt up there, and this one here. Then I need to get the outside bolts, and we'll be fine, because I'm going to be okay with leaving the leaving the actual pieces in there, but I would want to create kind of a more custom backing for there where it's actually attaching to my incoming hallway. I think that'll work. So let's go ahead and add those, and then we step back up to there, and now what we should see is a completely clear hallway. Although I've made my scene so complicated now, it's hard to actually get to it. There we go. All right, so there we go. So now if I am coming down this hallway, you can see I've got places where I can step in here, and I can step onto this pad, which I could make an elevator or whatever. And if I look up, I've got all of my upward chambers. If I look down, we can see everything there. And, you know, it's created a pretty interesting scene here. So like I said, I might want to do some custom geometry to go in there, but it's only one little place instead of having to do it all over. All right, so there you go. This will give you a nice start as to how you can actually start creating some fairly complicated stuff within your procedural modeling toolkit. So I would encourage you to go and work your way through it. Now I've got a little bit of an extension here down the hallway behind us, so we can back out and get a little longer hallway. Also, for those of you who get the downloadable files here, there's a little Easter egg in this one where it's got a hint as to the next Nerdy pack, just for you guys. So make sure you check that out. I'm not going to turn the camera around so you can see it. I'm going to leave you in suspense. So you've got to go get the downloadable if you want to see it. All right, so that does it for this one. If you like this video and videos like it, please follow me on Patreon, patreon.com/Ellery. And if you support me there, you'll be able to get downloadable versions of the video as well as downloadable scene content files. Or if you'd like to get this episode or any other episode of Modo with Ellery a la carte, you can get those on Gumroad. That's gumroad.com/Ellery. Again, if you want more procedural modeling, more will be coming. But in the meantime, go check out Brad Peebler's excellent tutorial series on procedural modeling, and it supports a great cause. That does it for this one. Now go make something cool, and I'll see you next time.
Yum, yum!